16C. Okay, good.
More or less.
More or less, thank you. I have a quick question for Claudia. We know that AT&T is one of the world leaders of the Internet of Things. I want to come back to that if I can and just say, how does this change the business horizon, the plans that you see, because things are changing from the traditional phone and tablet market to a more expanded view. How is that changing the thinking of the company and what are the implications?
Yeah, there are, the business, as you're saying, it's really changing, it's going global. And of course, also the thinking of the company is changing. I can give you a couple of examples. So one of the services that we are offering is AT&T Cargo that enable the customer, for example, to monitor the shipping merchandise that is traveling around the world while it's traveling. So you can really take fast decision to for example, decide and not to deliver the merchandise if it's rotten or if something goes wrong. So you can spare a lot of money from a company's standpoint, but you can also take decision really on real time. Or another example is connected car, where AT&T has different agreements. We are 8 car manufacturer and we are connected the car worldwide. So for example, BMW, and customers are driving from Germany to France to even worldwide. And so, the approach of the company is really changing because we need to connect them globally. We need also to address the different regulatory challenges that we are experiencing because already in Europe you have 28 different type of regimes. So you really need to have an harmonized framework and to talk to different regulatory bodies to explain them the hurdles that we can encounter. One of them can be cross-border data flow, where you really need to move the data across the border, and or certainly spectrum, or enabling the extraterritorial use of numbering, as someone was saying, because this car or the ship has of course a SIM card which is linked to it, and you need to connect them wherever they are. So they need to work in each and different member state. So it's really different from the handset that we used to have before, that is managed locally or that has a local approach, and you just interface with a singular regulator in each and every state you are. So it's really different.
Thank you, Claudia. So, Sebastian, for next year, maybe the topic should be understanding digital boundaries. I mean, I think that's where we are right now. Yeah. I mean, if you have to deal with so many countries just here, and then we have the world, that is going to be an enormous challenge. And as has been said in this panel, we have people who just don't care about, if they're crossing a boundary, they want their systems to work. They want everything to be seamless. Mobility is already moving that forward in that direction, but it gets more complex with all these other devices like cars, cargo, things. So we are talking about things and boundaries. Are there any questions from the audience? We always ask that, and then we cut you off and say we don't have any time, but we have time for 1 or 2 questions. Yes? Convenient that you're by a mic. This is good.
Hello, Aulis Koisto from Ericsson Oulu. Thank you for very good presentations, and I can concur most of those. One important thing that I see is that how do we combine those different factors, and that means money. So how do we ensure the funding and earning models that will be required to change quite drastically when 5G comes? One thing, regulators have learned to make money of selling spectrum. And that probably is not going to be the case in the future if we want to really make this happen. Second thing, our dear operators have taught end users for flat fee, like we heard already from Nokia's presentation, that 4G is made for flat fee. How do we change that? That's probably the most difficult to change the behavior of end users for consumers, to say. Of course, for businesses it might be slightly different. And then last but not least, everybody is talking about the densification of networks. That will cost a lot of money. And like we heard from VTT's presentation, there is a lot of technical challenges, so it will not come free of charge. How do we and where do we start the dialogue between different parties, industry regulators and businesses right now to make sure that we pave the way for the 5G?
That is an excellent question, and I could easily defer that. Well, I'm going to ask someone to answer it, but that should be on our session next year too, because this is going to be how to pay for this. But go ahead, yes.
Yeah, I think you are raising major issues. From the experience from 3G, the 3G spectrum money has killed Ericsson. I was used to work for Ericsson, so I know the story very well. So you're addressing something that the government should not kill its own industry just because they want to pocket some money, to pay for whatever, to be re-elected. That was pretty obvious back in 2001, 2002. Second one, as I mentioned, you cannot compete with 4G, so you have to use 5G with a different business model, to make money out of something else. If you just continue with the 4G model with this flat rate, I doubt 5G will happen at all. And that would be just impossible for anyone to invest into it. And then the last question, since the governments are pushing for this, European Commission also is funding massively 5G as well. I think they have to be very careful in, especially the industry, in building the business plan for 5G, not to show it's going to bring trillions of dollars. Because as soon as you see that, the regulators are going to say, well, we'd like to have a cut from it as well. This is what happened with 3G as well. So we should not repeat that mistake with 3G.
Yeah, just to echo Bruce's response and give a national perspective. Definitely, I mean, the value of the spectrum need to reflect the market price, and we have seen a number of biased results which completely affect the industry. So I think we see more and more policymakers understanding this element. On the densification and the small cells, I mean, we have done recently a study in Europe, and we see that on average, we need 12 months to get all the approval in Europe to install a base stations. 12 months. We have a peak on 18 months in certain countries, or depending on the member states' regulations. And that's one of the key challenges we have now to resolve, having a harmonized view, one-shop stop to facilitate and better response to the consumer demand. And by having this fast response to the consumer, I think we will we drive down the price, and we will offer the ability for the operators to really cope with what is happening in terms of and evolution of the traffic through the mobile network and mobile broadband solutions.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to comment from that perspective that if you look at the overall 5G or the future infrastructure all in all, so that it includes all the sectors of the society, and the role of the operator, I think that it's very important that we now separate the role of the network operator from the service operator. So we have already virtual operators in the telecoms, but these virtual operators are actually operating the data of the telecom service. Now, when we look at, for instance, this previous presentation by Mr. Lautanala about the mobility as a service, that is a service, and that requires an operator. And when we talk about the data, we talk about digitalization. We need to think about the operator in that sense, not the network operator alone. That's a separate entity for the network. But for the data, for these type of things like mobility as a service, healthcare as a service, community as a service, anything as a service, and each one of those services, they will require an operator. And this operator also is basically responsible on the data that he or she manages. And in this sense, I think that the overall 5G paradigm, the future greater intelligent infrastructure paradigm is really relying on data. As the spectrum was and is still important for the connectivity. But if you think about the overall infrastructure, the new value will be there in the data. And when we think about the data, we need to think about the data operator. And that's the way I think that we can start seeing that how the new value is created on the top of the platforms that we need to build below that.
Thank you, Timo. One of the frustrations that I always have when I'm here is we never have enough time. And that was, if we had one question, thank you for your question. That was excellent. Something we're going to have to deal with at the next meeting. We have 2 more sessions that follow this, but I wanted to have the chair provide us just some closing observations, if you would.
Okay, thank you. Thank you of this very extremely interesting presentations. Only a few notes that what I made during this presentation, that intelligent infrastructure is a mandatory requirement for our digital future. So there's a big relationship between digital environment and nation's competitiveness, wellness, and standard of living. Future technology, especially 5G, defines and allow new business models, and also it defines the economical environment. And 5G is the future, but the route is unknown. There's lots of open questions, and technical development will continue. And as a final note, what I put here is that I think that we need an extremely high-speed communication channel between the brains of policymakers, regulators, and industry players. Thank you.
Here, here. Well, as you can see, this was the best panel of the entire conference. Thank you to all the panelists very much. Yes.
You have 10 minutes break. And then you have 2 sessions starting, one here on it's on smart cities,